The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 28.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, a.k.a. Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From the movies to books to TV shows and more, we're always looking at the deeper themes and meanings that are found in the beloved series of Star Wars. Today, we're discussing Chapter 3 of Star Wars The Mandalorian. It's entitled The Sin, which I thought was an interesting take right off the bat. Mm-hmm. But joining me today on the panel is Angela Ciolana. Hi, Angela.
Hello. I'm excited to relive my Rocketeer flashbacks tonight.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Second up, we have Mike Creevy. Hey there, Mike.
Hey, Father. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you, of course. And third, today we have Andrew Hermes. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Father.
Thomas is unfortunately not able to join us tonight, so we have just the four of us. So we start off with, of course, The Sin as the title of this episode, and I kind of want to come back to that at the end because okay. I'm very interested in kind of picking that apart a little bit and hearing your thoughts. But I did see on the Twitterverse somewhere that someone commented that this could just be called the Baby Yoda show instead of the Mandalorian. And I just, thought that was totally appropriate. He kind of steals every scene that he's in. And I'm pretty sure it's a he because I heard a pronoun in one of the episodes where it referred to him. In fact, I think it was this episode, Dr. Pershing referred to him. So
yep.
I have always just sort of assumed that, but it's nice to have a confirmation. So the episode sort of starts off with the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda receiving a transmission from Greef Karga telling him to deliver the bounty directly to the client. And we have this adorable little scene with Baby Yoda where he starts to play with the knob on the lever. And the Mandalorian is like trying to tell him to like, no, that's not a toy. And I thought that was adorable. I have a almost 2-year-old nephew. And I was home just the other week, and I had this portable coffee grinder, hand grinder, and I was making coffee, and he just wanted to come play with it. And it was the connections there with a youngling is just too cute.
It's very baby, like babies reach out for shiny things or cool looking things. Yeah.
So we then get the Mandalorian to deliver the baby to the client, and it's really interesting that as he walks to the place where the client is, you can just sort of obviously tell that the Mandalorian cares about this baby, and he takes him to the client and receives his payment, Beskar steel, and it's inside this device called a Camtono, I guess, and I had not ever made the connections with that device before. But I think Angela, you have all sorts of connections to this device.
Well, okay, so have you guys been to a Star Wars convention before?
No,
I have not. No.
Okay.
No.
Well, I haven't, but I've watched the live stream a lot. And
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the kind of traditions that's developed is that people dress up as this Wilro Hood character from The Empire Strikes Back, who we see like in the background when everybody's leaving Bespin, and he's like running out wearing like the orange work suit, jumpsuit, and he's got the ice cream maker like that he's holding in his arms, right? So that's kind of the tradition now, is like people dress up as this character, Wilbur Hood, and they carry an ice cream maker or some kind of ice cream reference. So obviously in this episode, we saw that it is a safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's cooler to me is that there's this viral video that was out a couple years ago of this little girl named Delta, and her dad is trying to get her to say the word ice cream. But no matter how he tries to coach her, instead of saying ice cream, she says Kamtono. So you get the connection somehow. The Star Wars, whoever wrote this script, picked up on that, and they chose to use that word that this little girl used for ice cream for the Star Wars safe that looks like an ice cream maker. Isn't that amazing?
And it's so cool to have like Carl Weathers of all people sitting there like very casually telling him like, get a Camtono of spice, all this like this cool like shady guy, and it's like this dad somewhere out there is like, you've got to be kidding me. He's like, sweetie, we're famous.
So was that video before the name actually appeared in Star Wars?
Yes.
Okay,
this is the very first time that has ever been named. It's just nobody knew what it was before this show. But now we know it's a safe, and it's called the Camtono.
That video is adorable.
It is.
Did you guys notice too, by the way, when he was taking, just to back up a minute, speaking of little kids, because I keep thinking of, obviously with Baby Yoda, the little detail of like, he's just kind of like scared and apprehensive and just like a little kid out of his, and his like little ears are blowing in the wind and stuff. And for some reason that like the ears really got me, because I don't really remember a whole lot of motion on Yoda's ears. Back in the puppet days or the CGI. So for whatever reason, that was just like every little detail, and like they added more baby sounds, I feel like, in this episode. It was like really pulling on the heartstrings in a big way on purpose, Well,
and it sort of reminded me too of just like a dad pulling his kid in a little red wagon behind him, but obviously, in a bit more of a dangerous context here. And I would say that I think that's probably what's pulling at like all the viewers' heartstrings is that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So he unfortunately delivers Baby Yoda, collects his bounty, his Beskar, and then we have this fantastic whole sequence of events that happen back at the Mandalorian camp, which is really, really cool because he brings all of that Beskar to the armorer. And we have this, first of all, encounter with a heavy infantry Mandalorian who immediately scoffs at how the Beskar was obtained, because he's irritated that the Mandalorian is working with the remnants of the Empire, who is the reason that they have to live in the shadows and in secret. And they made comment that the Empire is the reason that their world was shattered. So that was kind of interesting, but we have this fight kind of break out between the two of them. But something that was pointed out after I had watched the episode was the voice of this particular heavy infantry is actually Jon Favreau himself, who has voiced Mandalorians before.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He voiced a character called Pre Vizsla in the Clone Wars. And that character is actually really important to the history of the Mandalorians. So actually the name Vizsla is important too. So we had talked about this before the show, that whether we were going to talk about the name of the heavy infantry Mandalorian or not. But yeah, like in the credits, so he is called Paz Vizsla.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found both of the first name and the last name interesting. But before I go into that, does anybody like do you guys did you talk, or first of all, how did you look that up beforehand, or did you hear about it through like our pre-show discussion?
I heard a little bit about it, and I was a lot of it was in the context of just the excitement of the heavy infantry Mandalorian Black Series action figure, but that's a whole other thing. But no, I hadn't really dug too deep on that, but that was, I'm starting to kind of, do some of this homework in between shows now, because it is kind of cool to try to see where they're, well, and to sort out how much of certain things are canon versus how much of it's from a lot of the expanded universe, because clearly Disney's move here since they, bought all this was to try to, edge that out, which they did like legally, you know what I mean? As far as like, this is canon, this is not, but so much of it is so rooted, I think, in just the, kind of background noise and the vision or visuals that we have sometimes from growing up with a lot of this that I'm still trying to sort some of it out.
Mm-hmm. How about you guys? Did you hear about it or beforehand, or are you familiar with the character previously?
I'm familiar with the character from the TV show, and he is like an awesome character, and kind of he's a very very awesome story arc, and the way he goes out on the show is pretty epic. But I didn't pay attention to what his name was in the credits, so that was my first time finding out about that.
And I'm going to betray my Star Wars fandom by admitting that I have only seen a few episodes of the Clone Wars.
That's okay.
So it's definitely something that I want to go back to at some point. But hearing the name of this Mandalorian didn't really strike me. But I also don't have the same context that you guys do. But what I do find very cool about it is just all the many ways that they do try to tie these shows together. It's all part of one universe, and the way that they connect to the animated shows or the movies or the novels is always just fascinating, even if it's a sort of inconsequential sort of detail. But they are aware of it and making the effort to connect them. So,
do you want me to get into like the connections, or should we consider that like spoilers for people who haven't seen the Clone Wars or Rebels, or how do you want to do this?
I think I think we just throw out there that we are going to get into spoiler territory for the Clone Wars. I'm happy to go there because the Clone Wars aired years ago, and this isn't necessarily new territory. So please, Angela, enlighten us.
Okay, cool. Okay, so, since Mike mentioned Legends, there was a character in Legends called Tor Vizsla. So he was actually interesting in that he has a direct connection to Jango Fett. Actually, he went out and in Legends, Jango Fett was adopted, and his adopted father was killed by Tor Vizsla. So Tor Vizsla was then hunted down by Jango Fett and killed by Jango. So that's the Legends connection. But the canon connection is that actually in the series Rebels, we understand that thousands of years before the Old Republic, there was a Jedi Mandalorian, and his name was Tar Vizsla. So similar to Tor, I think they were inspired by that. So this Jedi was the first Mandalorian Jedi, and I don't know if I don't think in canon there are any more Mandalorian Jedi, but maybe if somebody knows, they can email us and correct us. But so Tar Vizsla is a very interesting character because when he was a Jedi, he created something called the Darksaber, and so that was his lightsaber. It basically looks like and functions like a lightsaber, except it looks more like a sword rather than a beam of light, and it's black. So it became like he became a leader for the Mandalorians. And you know how on the Mandalorian show we've heard, I think it was the Armorer, say something about walking the way of the Mandalore, right? So the Mandalore is the title for the leader of the Mandalorians. And it's kind of like if we called the Pope the Catholic, sort of like that. So Tar Vizsla was named the Mandalore during this time that he was alive, and he united all of Mandalore. Well, he passed away, and the Jedi actually kept the Darksaber in their temple, and thousands of years passed, and then members from House Vizsla actually broke into the Jedi Temple during the time when the Old Republic was crumbling and there was the attack on Coruscant. And so they stole back the Darksaber and they took it to unite Mandalore again. And as you know, the Jedi and the Mandalorians were kind of like warring, right? They weren't allies. So the interesting thing is that when they go back to Mandalore, then Mandalore has a civil war. Okay. And there are the Mandalorians who want to be warriors, but then there's Mandalorians who want to be pacifists. And the outcome of the civil war is that the pacifists actually win, and the traditional Mandalorians are exiled to a moon called, I think it's called, well, it doesn't really matter. So a Concordia, I think it's the name. So the members of House Vizsla are really important because they have the Darksaber, obviously. And there's this character named Pre Vizsla, who is voiced by Jon Favreau, who is the leader of these kind of exiled Mandalorians. And they still want to be the warriors. And so they create this group called Death Watch. And they actually try to take over Mandalore, and they do it successfully by teaming up with Darth Maul. So this is a really cool arc in the Clone Wars. I really encourage you to watch it if you haven't.
He's not a good dude to hang out with.
Yeah, so they think everything's cool. They think they're like buddies with Darth Maul, and Pre Vizsla actually names himself the Mandalore. He has the Darksaber, right? But of course, Darth Maul challenges him to a duel and ends up winning and beheading Pre Vizsla. And that's when Darth Maul actually becomes the Mandalore for a little bit. So that's the history of the House Vizsla and Clan Vizsla and the Mandalore. So it's really, really a big deal in the Mandalorian canon that we have. And in addition to that last name being Vizsla and being really symbolic of like the kind of the warring Mandalorians, the warlord Mandalorians, you also have the first name, which is Paz, and in Spanish that means peace. So I thought that was really interesting because this character, this heavy infantry Mandalorian that we are introduced to, is both at the beginning he is kind of like picking this fight with the Mandalore character that we know, and then at the end, you know, he's kind of like buddy, like giving him the Rocketeer salute and everything at the end, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think I hope that they continue to, I don't know, tell us something else about this other guy. Now, like, I'm interested too in why does he have the Vizsla name?
Yeah, and I think the I was just thinking too. I don't know I'd have to go back and check. You know, these timeline questions keep coming up, but that encounter with Vizsla and with Obi-Wan and some of those those subplots in Clone Wars, and then ultimately the Maul fight. And I think it seems like about 30 years before where we're at now. I think ish, something like that. Would that be about right?
Probably so, because
we're 50 years from when Anakin was born. Roughly, because people pointed out that there may or may not be a connection there, but it's that the baby Yoda and Anakin were roughly the same age, and then So I'm trying to do the math in my head, but you see the flashbacks with him now 2 times. Obviously, this isn't a mistake with the armorer. Every time she's working, and you see flashbacks to him as a kid, and now I can't say I called it because I think I'd heard other people saying it, but sure enough, they showed it explicitly now when the door opens up and it's that battle droid. So we don't know who saved him from that either, which is a good question. Right. But yeah,
it had to have been something really powerful too. Yeah. I mean, obviously they must have destroyed that super battle droid like right before it shot the kid.
And it makes you wonder too,
those battle droids, you could. Well, obviously, it's been years since the prequels, but they look a lot better in this episode than they did in the prequels.
They do.
Yeah. And I was obviously that is the question, like who saved him? I think, maybe an obvious answer would be maybe a Mandalorian. or a group of them. And they found him, and him being the foundling that they brought in. But I was also thinking that maybe it was a Jedi. Maybe he has some, because like you said, it had to have been someone very powerful. And when you think of powerful beings that would save people, a Jedi would be at the top of the list.
How weird would it be if it was Yoda? Because I'm just wondering, would that be like that? Is that too, or Obi-Wan? I mean, they have the Obi-Wan show coming out, so that's kind of a cool, because it takes place further back, like Clone Wars era. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to see Ewan McGregor with the mullet again. maybe one more time.
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I think a Mandalorian rescuing him is more likely.
I think so too. Yeah.
This whole scene though had some really cool Christian connections too, and we sort of briefly kind of hit that topic, but kind of what stops the fight between the Mandalorian and Paz Vizsla was the armorer kind of talking about the way. She kind of asks the Mandalorian, "Have you ever removed your helmet?" And he says no. And has it ever been removed by others? And he responds, "Never." And she says, "This is the way." And he responds with, "This is the way." And they kind of all agree that this is the way. And that becomes like this marching mantra of the Mandalorians. And so it was really interesting. It's a reference to the way of the Mandalore. And so it's referring to the way that they live their lives according to their leader, the Mandalore. And it's darn near impossible for us not to make the Christian connection here, because the way, if you aren't aware, is the earliest name for Christianity.
Right.
It refers to just the fact that following Jesus is a whole way of life. It comes from Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, when he talks about the way of the Lord. In fact, St. John the Baptist, when he is ushering in Jesus, he says to prepare the way of the Lord, which echoes Isaiah. But then even in the Acts of the Apostles, we have numerous references to the way. The first one being in Acts chapter 9, on Saul's conversion. He was hunting down, of course, people who belonged to the way so that he could bring them bound to Jerusalem. And it's in that moment then that he is knocked off his horse, metaphorically or literally, we're not quite sure, but has his conversion to Christianity and to the way. So that was just a really cool connection there, because the way that the Mandalorians react to the way of the Mandalore is the same way that we as Catholics respond to the way of the Lord and follow our leader, who is, of course, Jesus Christ.
Well, and Paul even says at one point too, in telling his story, I persecuted this way. He's still calling it that, in his backstory. But yeah, no, that was such a cool connection.
Doesn't it make you wonder if the early Christians said this is the way?
like the secret handshake, like this is the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to start saying it at Mass during the sign of peace. we can start the trend.
You're going to find out who else is watching The Mandalorian, that's for sure.
I want it on a t-shirt. Isn't it amazing? We're only 3 episodes in, and maybe an hour and a half, maybe almost 2 hours, but we already have. Yeah. I have spoken. This is the way.
I want the one though of like him taking the little ball bearing back from little baby Yoda. It's not a toy. I just want that.
Yeah, all the dads out there are going to totally relate to that. So next up, after that whole sequence, he has his armor made, his chest armor and the other shoulder patch and most of it. But he also has Whistling Bird. Was that the name of it?
Whistling Birds.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And we had an interesting dialogue about the signet. And so we're still not quite sure what is going to be revealed as the Mandalorian signet. The armorer wanted the Mudhorn to be the signet because he defeated the Mudhorn until he tells her that he was helped by the enemy who didn't know that he was the enemy, and Baby Yoda, in fact, actually did the hard lift in there.
Quite literally.
Yeah. But we gotta see the whistling birds in action way quicker than I expected.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't tell how many. Was it just one? It was a little reminiscent of the Tony Stark thing, which again, Jon Favreau, like I couldn't help but laugh a little bit, back to the first Iron Man, or was it the second one? I think it was the first one. But like that simultaneous thing. But I couldn't tell, was it one flying around or two or three? I don't know, because he's supposed to use them sparingly.
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
I think I think I saw multiple ones, like the Iron Man thing that you're referencing. It seemed like it was multiple ones and he probably used most, if not all, of whatever she gave him. But yeah, maybe that's not the last time we'll see that weapon being used, because you never know, there may be more Beskar coming his way.
Right.
If they're easier to find than a Mandalorian, then I think he could come across it fairly easily.
But it's also interesting that he's told that they are valuable and rare, and he has no problem using them to rescue Baby Yoda. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but so that already is reaffirming the care that he has for Baby Yoda, if he's going to just use those without really thinking about it. But before we get there, he actually seeks out Grief Karga again, and to try to just get on to the next mission. He leaves Baby Yoda with the client, and we're not sure what's going to happen to Baby Yoda. And he gets a new puck with a bounty from Grief Karga, and again he asks the client what they plan to do with the baby, and the client basically tells him it's guild policy, that this is all now forgotten, so don't ask. But then he also asks Grief Karga what they plan to do with the child, and that's where Grief tells him to get a Camtono of spice and just forget about it. But we also learned something interesting there, that fobs were given out for Baby Yoda to all the bounty hunters, which was sort of surprising for me, but not unexpected, I guess, because that plays a role in the episode as it continues. We see the Mandalorian get onto a ship to depart and to just leave it all behind. And that scene was also really, really touching. He goes to move the lever that Baby Yoda had been playing with the knob, and sees that the knob is not there. And without at all seeing his facial expressions, it was completely obvious what was going through his mind. And you could almost see in his body language his reaction, which I thought was super cool.
I was awesome. That's bravo to Pedro Pascal again, because I was just thinking as you were saying that, Father, before you said about body language. I mean, it came up last time. It comes up probably every episode as long as he keeps that helmet on, because I just don't know how you do that, And it was every little. I watched it again before we did this tonight, and just like leaving his hands, he's just staring at it and keeping his hand there, and just the freeze frame. Like there's all this. He's moving. He's going here. He's going there. It's just that freezing in that moment of thought, without even having to see his face, was just so powerful. I really love that scene.
Yeah, I think Deborah Chow directed this episode, so it's our first time seeing her work on the show, and I think she made all the right choices. I mean, because you have to be creative with the mask on to convey emotion, and I thought, just that simple, like pulling into the mask, just you can almost like see his face through the mask, like just with that simple camera move, and all the editing choices that she had throughout that scene. I'll echo everything that you just said. We felt everything that he felt in that scene, and that's what makes this show work. Is that you have those choices have to hit every time, because we have to see past his mask, and because even in his speech, when we hear him talk, he's very monotone. He doesn't convey emotion in his speech even. So everything is through body language and camera movement and editing choices. So From this episode, this is my favorite one thus far. I think you see why Deborah Chow was chosen to direct all the episodes of Obi-Wan. Mm-hmm. So this is, if you didn't already know that, she's directing every episode of Obi-Wan. So I just after watching this one episode, I think I'm already sold on her.
Well, and I think that's the brilliance of including a character like Baby Yoda, is because without Baby Yoda, I think we as an audience would struggle to find a connection to the Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. And immediately adding Baby Yoda to that dynamic, we're relating to him as an uncle, as a dad, as someone who has a younger brother or a younger sister. We have a frame of reference to connect. And so when he is on his ship and almost to touch that lever and everything just stops, all of us have a way to know exactly what he's thinking, without a facial expression, without, any of that sort of thing or talking. And yet we have that connection.
Well, and it's like in the spiritual life in general, or just any time in life, you have those moments when there's no going back. Because, like he flips everything off. He's climbing out of the cockpit. You don't know exactly how it's going to go, but he's not going to walk down the ramp and be like, no, okay, I was right, and get back on the ship and leave. Like, there's like a rest of the show, a rest of his story. As long as the show goes, potentially decision has just been made at that moment, which was so cool.
And you can you can just kind of tell that he has a guilty conscience. Like already when he's asking the question twice, what are they going to do with it? You get that it's planted in your mind. Like, plus what we know about his backstory, and that he was found and he was a kid. So all those things, plus of course, all that brilliant acting just really add up to this idea that he has a guilty conscience.
Well, and it's like, for some reason, the Jerry Maguire line just popped in my head of "You had me at hello," like because it was the moment that he sees Baby Yoda. It wasn't like it happened like just in the last few minutes. It's like that very first thing he ever does is save his life, from IG-11. Mm-hmm. And then, the little, like the God and Adam kind of like finger touching thing. I mean, that was so that is just so cool that's been there from the very, very beginning of their relationship.
And also Baby Yoda saved his life too.
Right.
With the Mudhorn. I mean, with that scene, thinking back to it, when the Mandalorian is like kneeling on the ground and he has his knife out, it's like he almost looks like, again, that brilliant acting, I'm going to die right now. Right. And so I think, like just all these things put together, the relationship, you're right, really adds to the character of the Mandalorian.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say that it also echoes the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. And I don't know all the proper terminologies for the different stages, but this was, like that point that once he crosses this threshold, like his life is forever changed and he can't go back. It's analogous sort of to that moment where Luke goes back and finds his aunt and uncle dead, and he knows that there's no going back to his old way of life, even though he kind of wanted to at that point. And the Mandalorian has, you can almost tell he's got that dilemma going on. Like I could just put the knob back on and leave and go back to my old life, or I can do what's right, which isn't the easy thing to do, and go down this road. And of course he chooses to do the right thing, and there's no going back.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you should go.
Oh, no, all I was going to add was it goes back to what we were saying before about we'll find more about his foundling situation, because whatever happened, it's like you can almost imagine that moment of what was that for, that sacrifice, whatever. Someone did this for me, and if I don't do this now, was that a waste? So it's just there's a lot of potential there for where they take this.
Yeah, I was just going to jump to when he's going back to the client's lair or whatever. And is it okay if I go there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. When he sees the crib, I guess you want to call it, the little egg thing in the trash, I almost thought to myself, like, is this just kind of like on the nose a little bit? Like it's in the trash, it's just very deliberate. But what I liked was in the music that when he sees and he's looking at that and the camera's on that crib, we hear the strings get faster, kind of cueing like his emotions are getting, he's getting angry and he's getting upset. And so I just wanted to note that and praise that little point.
Yeah.
The deeper meaning of just, like the practical side of they threw that out in the trash, but the idea of like that's what they're doing to Baby Yoda, like that's what the whole attitude of, and then that's how what the the droid army or whoever all was trying to do that to him when he was a kid. So just all that coming together again, like he's losing it.
Right. Well, to the client, he was a thing to be used, not a person to be loved. To use the language of John Paul II. But it was also, we have that fascinating eavesdropping scene there.
Yes.
Where he's eavesdropping and he's hearing the client just ordering Dr. Pershing to extract the necessary material and be done with it. And so you can obviously already hear that he doesn't care about Baby Yoda at all. Dr. Pershing does. And so we had a couple things to note there that I found is Dr. Pershing mentions that, quote, he has explicitly ordered us to bring it back alive, unquote. So we still have a bigger person at play or character at play who is wanting Baby Yoda, and who that is, we have no real sense or inkling of yet. So that's a question that still needs to be answered. But also, what were they extracting or going to extract from Baby Yoda? And I have a couple thoughts. I guess I'll get your guys' thoughts here too. But the first thought that I had was maybe this was the reference to the midichlorians. That is not an explicit reference, but it could be.
Just a way for everybody to win.
Right. to nod to the prequels. But as I kind of was seeing it more, and someone pointed out, and Mike, I think you mentioned this in the last episode, was someone again pointed to the similarity between the logo on Dr. Pershing's coat to the same, more or less the same logo that's found on Boba Fett when he's a clone on Kamino. So the other option that I thought of was maybe they're trying to extract DNA in order to clone him and try to use an army of Yodas who are, of course, obviously strong with the Force. So those are my two thoughts, but I don't know if you guys had anything to add there.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking of, well, there's the rumor out there, or I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but the episode that's gonna come out like a couple days before Rise of Skywalker comes out, there's supposed to be some connection to the movie. Like I said, that's the rumor at least. So I was thinking maybe they're trying to find out, maybe there's some connection between what allows this Yoda species to be Force sensitive, from a very early age. Well, I mean, he's 50, but I mean, he's still a baby. Like,
for them.
He looks great.
Yeah, he looks good for 50. Yeah, but so maybe there's a connection between how Baby Yoda is able to have these Force sensitive powers at this young age, and how Rey is able to have these Force sensitive powers without ever practicing them. So maybe there's some connection there. Again, it's all speculation. There could be nothing there, but that's just something that I was thinking of.
I'm more in favor of thinking that Emperor Palpatine's a clone in the new movie, and that's the connection. Yeah. But I don't know.
Well, and I wonder too, because I have, well, we all do, we have so many questions and the whole, I know the whole like Snoke getting cut in half thing got criticized. I certainly wasn't expecting it, but I don't know if you guys saw this somewhere along the line, just because I think most of us who don't, Andrew, you probably know this better than most of us here, but the amount of time that goes into these productions when you're talking about on the big screen, and the discussions that take place and everything. I read somewhere, if you look at the timeline of it, that if I remember correctly, Rian Johnson's basic layout for and draft of Last Jedi was like already existed and had already been seen by J.J. Abrams before The Force Awakens even actually was screened, because they were already doing the early. So you know, like when you're watching Force Awakens in 2014 or 15, I guess it was, that's already in the plan somewhere. However it was going to be planned out, you know, maybe they didn't know at the time, but so I can't help it. I don't know. I keep wondering, like, we're in the formative years here of the beginning of the First Order. Snoke must already exist somewhere. So it's just, I don't know. I'm racking my brain trying to figure out how he fits into this whole, you know, Palpatine's still around thing. I don't know. December 20th can't come soon enough.
Another interesting thing, to add to that. You're right. Yeah. J.J. Abrams was shown the outline. And there was a recent interview with JJ where he said, he confirmed again, he's like, I was able to see, you know, Ryan's timeline, and it had no effect on, you know, he didn't know he was going to do the third movie, but he said if he had done the third movie, he said everything that he laid out did not interfere with it. But Colin Trevorrow, who was previously connected to the third movie, he mentioned that the whole bringing Palpatine back was not his idea, but it was strictly JJ's. So, you know, so we'll see, you know, what the machinations are for Palpatine's return, you know, in the film, and we'll see if the show has anything to do with it. So yeah, that was a interesting point to bring up.
And you can guarantee we'll be back to talk about that when the movie comes out.
Well, and can I just add one more thing real quick again, because I know we're not talking about Rise of Skywalker specifically, but only because, you know, this is all somehow it has to fit in the same overall story arc, and you know, with some of the promotional stuff they're doing for Episode 9, without, you know, any spoilers or anything, which I was thankful for, I did see some references. I think Oscar Isaac just teased this idea of, you know, 9 really bearing out this picture of this big sort of Jedi Sith, like, huge chess match that's been going on. That was the phrase he used. I'm sure you guys saw that. And that, you know, you're finally going to see where checkmate falls. So that idea of this grand scope, that clearly that's whatever that is, that's going on in the background of all this, and that this could tie into that, it's just kind of cool.
There's a lot of holes and questions, but to kind of bring it back to the show, what I was wondering is, you know, of course we see the Mandalorian go in, and then he walks in and there's like this mind probe droid that he destroys, but Dr. Pershing says, like, you know, don't hurt him, blah, blah. And then he's like, well, something about how I saved him. Like, he would be dead if it wasn't for me. Right. And that was the big question in my mind, was like, okay, well, if they're taking something out of him and to do something for somebody else, but then Dr. Pershing, is that process the process that is saving him? Is that why they are, like, is this little guy in danger for some reason? Is he unhealthy? Or is Dr. Pershing just doing this solely because he's deep down, like, just a good guy in a bad situation, and he, like, on the side is taking care of this little kid? So that I have all those questions in my mind.
He could be.
I think this is not the last. Sorry, but I think I just wanted to say I think it's not the last time we'll see Dr. Pershing. Right. I think you know, naturally he would be the first person the Mandalorian would go to if there were, you know, if God forbid Baby Yoda got hurt or anything like that. Right. You know, I think there is definitely a lot of room for him to come back, and maybe we'll have those questions answered.
Dr. Pershing to me seems to be the kind who is, like, just super, super into his work, and is probably being used by the client. So in the same way that maybe a scientist would be super attached to their lab rats, you know, like without necessarily paying attention to what's, you know, hierarchy and a bureaucracy above his head, but he's super focused on his work and what he believes to be the good of it, and obviously has an attachment to Baby Yoda. But moving on, the Mandalorian rescues Baby Yoda, and that's where he fights his way out and uses the whistling birds without really a second thought to escape. And this is then the point where all the fobs with all the other bounty hunters comes into play, because he's leaving with Baby Yoda. Obviously, the client has reactivated the bounty. and all the fobs start beeping, and you just know that a big confrontation is going to happen, which of course it does, led by Grief Karga and all the bounty hunters and the Mandalorian. And they confront him, want him to surrender the kid, and he hops into the speeder and starts shooting his way out, but gets outnumbered and outgunned. And then we have one of the coolest scenes of the entire episode of all the other Mandalorians flying with their jetpacks to the rescue.
And did you catch Grief Karga's Star Wars line of "I'm your only hope"?
Yeah.
Because I'm your only hope.
It's like they're trying to throw out as many of like obscure and random references to the movies that they can, which is great.
Yeah.
But the Mandalorians come to the rescue, including the heavy infantry Mandalorian, which was really cool. And I know that we had kind of talked about this before. And one of the other things that I thought about in that moment was again, that idea that they are part of a tribe, like the way of the Mandalore. And so even if they have a personal disagreement, which they did, he was willing to let that go for the sake of supporting his brother in this fight. And I thought, how cool is that? How analogous again to just Christianity, and we who are all, in this fight together, that we might disagree with one another on whatever it is, but at the end of the day, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ, and you can count on my support, in the fight for good and justice. And so I loved that connection, that they can be at odds against whatever, but they will always have each other's back. That idea of sacrificing for one another, which was also something that they mentioned, was that they're going to have to move the covert, and that must have been a reference to their little hideout. That now that they've all revealed themselves, they will have to relocate. But they had to relocate because they all decided to support the Mandalorian, which again, I love that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I really didn't see it coming. Maybe I should have, but like it didn't seem like they had any, or based on the episode, that they had any idea of what he was even up to, or what his bounty was, or his concern, or any of that. Like was it just that like he was under attack and they show up? I couldn't really tell.
I think they had to have known, because the heavy infantry soldier, or the heavy infantry Mandalorian, knows that he's working with the Empire.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
So they had to, perhaps they even knew of the bounty, but chose not to work with the Empire, whereas the Mandalorian did.
That's a good point. Yeah. But they're there. But you're right. They're there for him, because he's at the end of the day, he's one of theirs. Right. That's pretty cool.
And then we have him confront Grief Karga again and shoot him off his ship, which was fun. And I totally didn't expect him to die, and he didn't. He was saved by some Beskar in his front pocket. And the Mandalorian.
And now, did you think that the Mandalorian shot there on purpose?
Yes.
Yeah. Or do you think he got lucky? Because I think he did that on purpose. I don't think the Mandalorian would have missed, because he showed him where he kept the Beskar. So I think
I was wondering about
it was more
that.
than luck.
Yeah, because I saw somewhere they had another one of these panels after they had screened a few episodes, and it was before we had seen any of the episodes. But there was something, I can't remember exactly how it went, but there was something that when Jon Favreau and Carl Weathers were having this back and forth about working together, and something came across about, Jon Favreau talked about Carl Weathers, like, now we're filming season 2, and like we found this really creative way to get him in there, or something like that, which I don't think they meant to kind of give any plot points away. But when I saw this scene, I almost wondered, like, was there a version where he was supposed to die? But they're like, no, he's a great character. And wait a minute, he's got Beskar in his pocket. so I don't know. Maybe it went either way. Who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah. So he then takes off with Baby Yoda, and the Mandalorian gets a salute from one of the others in a jetpack. And I loved his line, I got to get one of those.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
And then
I was watching him, like, I was like, yeah, that's right, Mandalorians can fly, and I don't know why he didn't get on that jetpack bandwagon.
Well, if you
maybe we'll see it now.
If you notice, his helmet also does not have the rangefinder. So
that's right.
I still feel like this show might be, like, at the end of the season, maybe he will have accumulated his complete armor and all the bells and whistles.
Sure.
Yeah, earlier in the episode when they had that kind of tizzy underground, and the heavy infantry guy mentioned that only one of them is allowed above ground at once. And whenever he comes down underground, you see all the other guys kind of look like they already have all their armor. So it's almost like he's at that point where he's the guy who has to go out and sort of earn everything.
He's the junior man on the account.
Yeah. So then the episode ends with that final scene with the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. And just like any dad out there, he's like, okay, fine, you can have the knob to play with. And they go off into space.
Of course, my wife got on the case because she's like, he just gave him the choking hazard? But then I reminded her that it was like, well, no, he ate the frog earlier. So maybe it's not that much of a problem.
Well, cool. I want to go back to the title of the episode. It's titled The Sin. And so again, I'd like to know your guys' thoughts on that. I had a few thoughts because I was trying to, as I watched the episode, figure out what the sin referred to.
Right.
And so I came up with 3 different options, and I think it was kind of an interesting set of 3. I thought perhaps one of them was the sin of abandoning the child, of giving it to the client. And I sort of equated that with maybe that was the Mandalorian's own view of personal sin against himself. Second option that I thought of was he broke the guild code. And so I thought maybe, okay, so then maybe the sin is referring to the fact that the Mandalorian sinned against the bounty hunter guild. The third option that I thought of was him working for the Empire, and the Mandalorian clan seeing that as a sin against them because it's sort of an act of betrayal to work with the enemy. So I don't actually know what the sin referred to. Maybe it's meant to refer to multiple things, but what are your guys' thoughts?
I had one more option, which is actually not related to the Mandalorian, but to Dr. Pershing. And that is, was the sin referencing, or in this overall meaning, the concept of whatever they're doing to Baby Yoda, is that considered a sin?
That's a good point. Yeah, I like that. What I was thinking of was, I think the first point that Father was touching on, I think it's like just a sin of omission on the Mandalorian's part if he didn't act on, saving Baby Yoda, because it's that pivotal scene, that we're talking about where he's in his ship ready to leave, and he makes a decision to go back, because of that, his conscience eating at him. So, yeah, that's what I thought, at least, as far as the sin. But I think I like yours better, Angela.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of the really odd one out.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I dig that one. But
we're Catholics, so it's both and. Right?
I was just going to say, I vote for an all of the above, because I think it's also, Peter Kraft is so good on the whole. He's a couple talks on the whole question of fated or free, I think, which ties into this too, because it's both. It's the idea, and I think that in terms of my take on it would apply to all those options as well. The idea that it's, in a weird sense, like, with all these people making these free choices, but there's a bigger will going on, and it's maybe it's the mea culpa of the Star Wars universe, like this, or rather this sort of happy fault kind of situation where somehow this is all gonna, in the end run, be part of this bigger plan, whatever the Force is, that is going on. And that's something that I think is really cool about this whole show for me personally is just that, if it's just a space western, that's cool. If it's just a this, if it's just a that, we talked about a lot of those themes, but I keep coming back to, like, I don't know, I think, like, the Force is the thing that's unique really about Star Wars, and I really think that's the main character in a way here as well. So it'll be neat to see what they do with this.
Any final thoughts about the episode?
Well, I was kind of expecting a confession scene. I don't know if you guys were, but I guess that's the Catholic in me. But I mean, we saw we saw the guilty stage. We saw like him making reparation for his sin. And so, I think we kind of saw most of the, stages related to sin that we kind of are familiar with in like real life. So, but yeah, I guess with Mandalorians, there's less talking and more action.
True.
You think we'll see him in a space confessional in the next episode, and like Baby Yoda's pulling stuff off the walls, and he's like, "No, come here."
Cool. Well, that's it from us. What did you think of episode 3 of The Mandalorian? Be sure to email us or comment on our Facebook or Twitter page and let us know. You can email us any feedback at starwars@sqpn.com. And you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. We'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, including Father Brian, Stephanie L., Heather C., John T., and Victor L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows here at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Give to SQPN.
Also, be sure to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere that you listen to your podcast. You can also subscribe on the SQPN YouTube channel. To find previous episodes of The Secrets of Star Wars, please visit sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we'll be back next week when we'll be discussing the 4th episode of The Mandalorian. And so until next time, Andrew Hermes, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Looking forward to next week already.
Me too. Mike Creevy, thank you for joining us as well.
My pleasure.
And Angela Cialana, thanks for joining us.
Gotta say it, I have spoken.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.